another group, and the land with a different group. And so the four main groups who were responsible for maintaining the four major powers of society are the Brahmanas, which were responsible to withhold the wisdom and knowledge, so knowledge keepers and sharing the wisdom. The Kshatriyas, which were the warriors and the protectors, so who carried the weapons and led the army. The Vaishyas, which were the wealth creators and taking the responsibility to sustain that wealth for a stable society. And the Shudras, which were the stewards of the land and abundant ecological and food systems. And so the Hindu society was most life positive. It is designed by Paramashiva, absolute law and order, where women were revered, honored, and protected along with their children, where the vulnerable people were protected at every level. And so this system created a very stable, just, equitable, and prosperous society, which is what the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is reviving today. And so this system actually came also from the rishis and visionaries of the Vedic traditions, who are smritikaras of Hinduism, and they made it possible. They made it also into a reality. And so once again, this is becoming a reality for all of us to prosper together as a community, as a society, as a humanity, through the blessings of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. And the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has actually launched many international mandates. So the 6 international mandates of Kailasa, the OMS. And so Mahakatita will be able to share more about it.
Yes, so far we have had such a beautiful discussions on various different dimensions. Just a brief introduction. Actually, Hinduism by itself is too vast to speak about. And I know each and every viewer that are watching us, actually, just to let you all know, we have people who are sitting in 100 plus countries and 500 plus cities. Sitting in our global universities, Kailasas Nityananda Hindu universities and Kailasas Nityananda Gurukuls, global schools, international schools which provide free education. Then Kailasas Nityananda Anna Mandirs, which offer free food, organic free meals. To billions of females are served and still counting, and we have people who are sitting in our global temples around the world, and there are so many viewers that are in more than 500 cities and 100 countries watching us in our one of our many of the social media platforms. Now each and every viewer must be curious to know the different having different perspectives and different outlooks on peace, the subject of peace, the revival, the whole revival of Hindu way of living, the blissful coexistence amongst.
And we have Dr. Mr. Richard MK, who's been here. So actually so nice. see you. Like continuously, you've been here listening to the conversation and being actively engaging and listening to the conversation. So that's wonderful to see your engagement. So that's
And
really
we
nice.
also have Mr. John Pitts who have joined us, and Mr. Patrick Henry. So we have all of you who have joined us, and now I'm sure each and every viewer is curious to know your views, have an outlook on your perspectives on what we have discussed so far and your points. So we now welcome our esteemed guests, Dr. Richard and Mr. John Pitts, esteemed guests today, to know their perspective, to know what is their view, what is it that they are going to be sharing about. So before we move on into the further segments, let us listen to from the esteemed guests that have joined with us today.
Dr. Mr. Richard, that you're joined here. And before we ask the questions, would you want to share in a few words based on the discussion that we had just had?
I'd like to thank Mahakathitha Ananda for reaching out to me and helping to coordinate this thought about peace and nonviolence and interfaith cooperation and being in the educational system for my entire career. So I'm very touched to hear this
important that this conference is occurring on this day in a time that troubled waters are all over the world. I don't believe I've ever seen such troubled waters, and change is occurring so rapidly today. That humanity is unable to grasp that change. And so I've done with the community thus far. So thank you, and I look forward to the rest of the morning.
Wonderful, sir.
Thank you so much for being here, sir. Thank you so much for being here, because it's such a delight to have so many of you who have done a lot of research in these fields, and there's so much of experience, knowledge, and result. And it's such a delight to listen to your perspective into this as well. And thank you so much for joining today. And we are extremely, each of our viewers are extremely delighted and curious, waiting to hear your perspective on our discussions further. So thank you so much for being here, Mr. John Pitts. And we also now welcome.
I want to add.
Yes, go ahead.
I want to add one more thing. I completely agree with the Supreme Pontiff. If we had turned politics over to women a long time ago, life would be very different today. I thought about that many times. Thank you
nice
for
that you shared
underscoring that today.
so true. And also, thank
Actually,
you.
that on, if you see the entire government of Kailasa, the entire administration, 80% is women, is run by women. And we also have like universities that train women to empower themselves and to be awakening that leadership consciousness in them. So delighted that you heard that and you are also resonating with that. And yes, we also have Mr. Patrick Henry Nityanandam. Would you like to share a few words based on what you have been hearing in this panel discussion so far?
I just want to thank you all for letting me be part of this. I want to be a silent listener mostly. I have nothing prepared, but I've worked with Richard. We've taught courses on peace together. We've written about peace together. I've taught courses on religion and peace from a Judeo-Christian perspective, featuring writers like Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, Daniel Berrigan, Dorothy Day, and various other peace writers, people who've been writing about peace and the relationship between religion and peace throughout the entire 20th century. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here. It's a real privilege and I'm learning so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, Sanatana Hindu Dharma at large, the whole revival of Kailasa that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is spearheading, is to bring peaceful coexistence, where Swamiji beautifully tells, it is not to claim supremacy of an individual religion, nor it is not to say, one race is the best and others are not. It is not with any of these, but in fact, Swamiji beautifully tells, Hinduism is simply put, it is the greater science of life. And Swamiji is here, the whole Kailasa, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is here, the whole revival of Kailasa is happening, simply to make every religion, every race, every gender, irrespective of their walks of life, their beliefs, their ideologies, their religions, we welcome, embrace everything and give the best of Hinduism so humanity can reap and walk towards a better future where humanity at large is experiencing a blissful coexistence. And I am sure this is spearheading a grand revival, showing to us the next generation, the future, where peace, blissful coexistence is our.
Wonderful. So we will now open up the discussions. And we have a first question for Dr. Richard Middleton Kaplan. I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. It's wonderful to meet you, sir, and have you here with us. So my question is, so based on your knowledge and your experience, what or why do you think the work of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism in reviving the enlightened civilization of Kailasa, why do you think it's so crucial at this point? And how can it benefit, how do you think it can benefit not just Hindus, but the whole of humanity, leading
point in time, and that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's work is well-timed and that it can benefit the whole of humanity. There are two different ways in which we could look at this. One is the direness of atrocities going on, the environmental pollution, the rise in crimes, the rise in suicide and depression, terrible global crises, and as you probably know, devastating political division and animosity here in the United States at the moment. So we could see that those conditions make it all the more necessary for the opportunities that we have at this historical moment of exceptional promise and opportunity. Logical course is not sustainable. One thing I've noticed here in the United States is that the news coverage of our unprecedented and intense environmental disasters, wildfires, floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, increasingly mentions in the news coverage that these things are related to climate change. So it seems to be becoming part of the vocabulary of everyday coverage that these things are awaiting change. Also, the cognitive psychologist, and even though our exposure to media makes it seem like there is more. And so this increasing consciousness and this pattern of declining violence sets us up for a supremely opportune moment to introduce this. And I think we are at a good point in time. Here in the United States, we have seen a revival not seen since the 1960s of mass nonviolent protest, most recently triggered by the murder of George Floyd. And we have even seen, in some cases, responses of police departments committed to nonviolent methods of restraint and reforming their practices. It's certainly true that there are people in the United States who resist the reality of globalism, but this undeniable reality has also led to more people than ever, at least in my awareness in this country, embracing a vision that what unites us is much greater than what transcends us. That's something that Patrick Henry has taught in his classes. I've tried to replicate in mine, and that I think is gradually breaking through into the consciousness. I'll also say that in the educational realm, the principles of equity, diversity, and inclusion have really come to the forefront in recent years. The group of academic leaders that I'm part of across the state of Washington has made a decision in recent years to foreground those principles of our common humanity. That is to say, instead of developing policies and procedures and then asking after we've developed them, oh, are these equitable? Can we tweak them a little bit? We now lead the conversation with equity. My college is about to embark on a revision of its strategic plan in which equity is the principal driving force that is going to lead every conversation. And we're not unusual in that in higher education. So I would say we do have a crucial point in time and a supremely opportune moment for building on these principles, leading to a peaceful and sustainable future.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was very insightful. And I do want to say it's really all policies, not just like an afterthought, as you said. So that is how we create change, when we realize that it really starts from the root. And also you've mentioned about, you know, the violence that's been happening. But we've also, as you said, there's a group of people coming together during this time, which brings immense hope, I would say, where we're seeing beyond, you know, those boundaries, and we're really insightful. And it's really inspiring to know that these policies, especially in education, in your field, it's being looked at in a holistic way, where, you know, social issues of equity and equality, all of these things are being built in. So thank you so much for your share.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to highlight something that you were sharing about, that how you were sharing about how, like, everyone, when the decisions are being made itself, the fundamental cognition from which the decisions are made is important, like how Dr. Richard was mentioning. This is something that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has been very insistent about having the leaders, the decision makers, the influencers, the leaders, having the right cognitions inside, the right inner construct inside, and them having peace-based, powerful cognitions about themselves, about the world, also reflecting these cognitions which are there inside. So that's really amazing, and it was wonderful to listening to you from sir, because I actually felt many of these teachings of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and what work you have been doing are so beautifully resonating, and just this oneness-based principles in being incorporated in that.
Yes, and now
and that. Sorry, Ma. Sorry for the technical glitch. glitch. I think there's a small internet glitch. Yes, go ahead, Ma.
To a sustainable future. As someone, Mr. John Pitts, who has worn so many hats and has experience, with people from all walks of life, what would you say would be the biggest challenge, if any, people may have in accepting and implementing the enlightenment-based lifestyle Kailasa is reviving for global peace and sustainable future?
Thank you for that question. As I mentioned earlier in my discussion, I made the comment that we live in troubled times, and we truly do. And in these troubled times, what is being highlighted is the lack of trust, fear. We fear that our lifestyle is going to be taken away from us. We fear that our money will be taken away from us. We fear that you being the government or you being whomever are going to ask too much of us. And so we fear. And the fear is coming from, as I mentioned earlier, to this rapidly changing world. And so the humanity is reacting in both fear and from that fear, the lack of trust. So we live in fear. And so how do we react then to that fear and this lack of trust? And we react in so many unexplained ways and unexplained directions that people take their lives. And as Dr. Richard mentioned, also, we live in such a polarized world that and I really can only react to how we live in the United States. You've become so polarized. It used to say we could not agree on anything, even if it's daylight or dark outside. We really have highlighted that discussion so much in the world today. As we live in the scriptures that we are seeing mother turning against daughter, father turning against son, and sons turning against their families, and people now are turning against everyone. To introduce a new enlightened lifestyle is to bring into that mix of fear and bring into that mix of lack of trust. It percolates to the surface. Who is the messenger? What is the message? All that is going to be so important. But we are at a precipice, I believe, that we are beginning to recognize that something has to change. And again, from my experience in Texas, the Texas legislature this summer, and this has gotten a lot of publicity, has gotten a lot of publicity. Is that loving one another? Is that looking at, like we were talking about earlier, taking away differences in gender, race, etc., and at any power? Is it looking at equity, as we were talking about before? No, it's not looking at equity at all. Is it looking at common humanity? No, it's not at all. Is it looking at any individual evolution? No, it's trying to keep that away. So it is a time, as I said, we are living at the precipice of needing something new to occur in this world. And so I believe it's all important.
Yes, and also, like you said, who is the messenger? The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has actually presented, so many time-tested, foolproof sciences based in Hinduism.
And thank you so much, Mr. John Pitts, for that insightful answer, because it is so true when you said about how it is any of the policies or decision-making processes in the present moment. Is it about equity? A decision maker is striving to create peace, but without looking at the factors and the components that actually build the peace, the base building blocks, focusing on individual evolution, because it is each and every human being that is the building block to build global peace. And the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism beautifully revealed, like he shared beautifully about how it is not by any revolution, it is not a revolution that is going to bring peace. It is individual evolution that is going to build peace. The biggest irony is when people pick up guns and swords and they say, I'm going to fight for peace. That very statement, fight for peace itself, you can never fight to bring peace. Ideology, supremacy of one ideology, it is not by claiming everyone in humanity should follow one ideology. That is impossible. But learning to coexist blissfully, only that can build peace. So many of the thoughts that you shared and so many of the as the foundation principles of Kailasa. So thank you so much for that answer, Mr. John Pitts.
And also, Mr. John Pitts, just to add up, why? Because as we all are seeing, take what do you like? What do we look for? It's all driven based on what the media shows and what the social media is showing to you. And these two things are already controlled by a group of people. So what you are desiring in your life, what should be the goal, what type of things that you want, whether someone else's pressure that is put to us, unknown to us. The problem is none of us are even aware that these are the things. I was so shocked. Actually, I have been brought up in the Nityananda Gurukul, Swamiji's Vedic school that Swamiji has been running. And I have been growing here from the age of 14. And before I joined Gurukul, I never knew, I was time. So when very recently, when I got in touch with my friends that were there outside and who are living this life outside, I was shocked. They were playing such violent games where they're enjoying killing people. I was shocked. And I was like, what type of enjoyment is that? And they're so okay with having how it's like a normal thing for them. And I was really shocked. And that's when I realized the very enjoyment that people have has changed. The taste that what we enjoy has changed drastically. People enjoy killing. We may say, okay, this person has murdered someone physically, so you're taking and putting them in jail. But what about the people? The cognition that they are continuously made to cherish. What is the root of all these? When someone is playing video games and they're saying we have such violent video games where you are going to go ahead and kill people, you're going to murder people, and that's what you gain points for. So that's the video games that we see, and people are enjoying that. People are gratified by that, and that is giving them that adrenaline boost. And we expect murders not to happen.
Yeah.
So this is how contradictory our society is there currently.
And unfortunately, like you were sharing, all of these are so normalized. Like,
Exactly.
can you imagine TikTok trends? So many alcoholism is so cool, and that is set as trend. Where partying, where having drugs is normalized. Unfortunately, with all of them, out of the pressure of social media, peer pressure, everything in the name of trend. Unfortunately, the wrong, and unfortunately, this is institutionalized where each and every child that is growing in today's world, what is cool? Being on TikTok, doing the trends, doing the latest ones, all of this without even realizing whether it is adding value to their inner evolutions, inner non-violence and self-confidence.
Actually, just like to share one thing with all of you. The way how I'm just 22, and so grateful to Swamiji for us to be a part of this, such an insightful discussion, and we are understanding how the various different perspectives, what is actually, the perspective of peace, and the works that each of you have done that are part of this panel. And I would just like to share with you one small difference in the way how we learn in the Gurukul. How peace-based education, when we say peace-based education, how it's actually peace-based education. I'm pretty sure this Macaulay's education system, you might have come across this meme already. There's a fish standing in front, and the competition says, the person who climbs the tree the fastest is the most mightiest. So this is how literally our current education system is. Everybody is just put with that one rule. Okay, you fit into this mold or you're not fit. So this is how the current modern day education system is. And I would just like to share how we study in the Gurukul. So when we are learning from any book, it is that author's logic that gets digested in us, right? So whenever we are studying books, you have maximum 1 or 2 authors, that their logic, their way of their thought currents, that we grasp from it. In Gurukul, the way we study is slightly different. We first open a chapter, we see the keywords, we note down the keywords, then the power manifestation. So this is a very, very unique contribution of Swamiji, where the powers from inside are awakened. So we have this power called as the power of third eye, through which we actually scan and download the information, the knowledge behind those keywords. So we note that down. And so in this way, we are actually scanning and we are understanding the cosmic knowledge behind it. And then we take these words, go and Google. This is called as Google confidence. That's what Swamiji teaches us. And we Google and understand the various different perspectives of how that concept from physics has so many people talking so many different things about it. So we learn all these, we digest all these, and after that, we open the textbook. Actually, we write a thesis on what we understood. And after finishing all these, then we open our textbook. By then, the textbook will already seem redundant. This is the way we study. So the inner space is not even affected with the forced logic of someone. It's like, see, a particular lock has a particular key. You can't try to force another key into it. It's never going to work. That level, this is the way the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism teaches us the peace by training us to study in all these different manners.
Actually, that was the question I wanted to ask Mr. Richard Kaplan. So, sir, as the Dean of Arts and Culture at the Walla Walla Community College, exactly how do you see the revival of the Vedic education system, the Gurukul, is necessary for a peaceful and stable and prosperous society?
Thank you. I'm so glad that your question was preceded by that beautiful explanation of the Gurukul education system, which sadly I have to contrast with some of my experience. So let's see, about 6 years ago, I was attending a conference at Northern Virginia Community College, and it was for college educators all across the country, teaching us how to teach peace building and conflict resolution to our students. And the presenter was a gentleman named Coleman McCarthy, who is quite renowned in the Washington, D.C. area for having instilled the teaching of peace. So there were about 60 of us participants, education, high school education, that taught you algebra or mathematics. Everyone raised their hand. Then he said, how many of you had a class that taught peace building or conflict resolution? Not one single person raised their hand. And he said, what does that show you about the values that we're teaching? And if we really valued peace building and conflict resolution, wouldn't we be teaching people how to do that? And just as we wouldn't expect somebody who'd never been taught mathematics to perform calculus, taught how to resolve conflict to be able to do it. Why would we expect people who haven't learned the techniques of peace building to be able to do it? And so now what you have in the United States is an increasing recognition of this. And this is why I think it is the perfect moment for these principles that were just so beautifully described to us about instilling this from the beginning. So there are now more than 275 colleges and universities in the United States with peace studies programs and others with related things like genocide studies, social justice, human rights programs. There are about 85 colleges and universities that are granting bachelor's degrees or majors in peace studies, more than 50 with master's degrees, 13 with Juris Doctor or law degrees, several with doctorates in peace studies. So these are helping people learn these principles and how to inculcate them. And it seems to me that this is the perfect moment for the Vedic education trend in higher education now in the United States that's called culturally responsive teaching, or sometimes culturally relevant teaching, CRT for short. This marks a major change in education from an older model, which could be caricatured or oversimplified as the professor as the sage who knows everything and the students as empty vessels who need to be filled with knowledge and who bring nothing themselves. The principle of culturally responsive teaching is that we honor, we acknowledge and we honor and we respect the life experiences, the perspective, the prior knowledge that students bring from their own lives. And we honor them as individuals and we welcome that experience into the classroom. mathematics curriculum in which all of the instructors have been steeped in principles of culturally responsive teaching and learning cultural humility so that they can recognize and welcome the humanity of each individual in their classes. So I think that we have a great moment here in terms of having laid the groundwork for building on it with these principles of the Guruku that we just heard so beautifully explained. Thank you.
Yes, and I think it's wonderful to see that how the cosmic principles of Hinduism are already being implemented, like how you were saying in the schools. So this is very nice to hear, and it's very wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Richard, for your sharing.
And thank you so much, sir, Dr. Richard, for sharing, because like you said beautifully, the modern Macaulay education system, like the example that you had quoted about the mathematics and trigonometry being taught versus, the conflict resolution and the science of how to create peace is not being taught to kids, because the modern Macaulay education system uniform with same coats, suits and boots, but unfortunately not cherishing the unique quality of each and every being, what that being is capable for. Like one of the biggest click that I have ever had, because since the age of 12, I've been raised in the Nityananda Gurukul, having been blessed and to have the Vedic education directly groomed by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. So now when I look at the modern schools, right, there are schools for arts, there are schools for mathematics, there are each school, business schools, each school is for a particular purpose, where all the children are fit into one template. Each of all the children from different walks of life, where a child who's interested in music, a child who's interested in art, a child who's interested in dance, a child who's interested in science, all of them are taught the same syllabus, same curriculum, forcefully fit into one same template. By the time that child completes the high school, it loses it. But if we see in Vedic schools, in Gurukuls, any universities, all the great universities like Nalanda, Takshashila that existed thousands of years before, one same Gurukul, like I would like to quote an example from the Hindu scripture of Mahabharata, where all the princes and everybody are sent to one same Guru, one same Gurukul, one same school. And one same school was able to produce the world's best archer, Arjuna, the world's best astrologer, Sahadeva, and it was able to produce the men who could wield the maces and fight with maces so beautifully, like Duryodhana and Bhima. One same school could produce people who are unique and who excelled in their unique capabilities. In today, what Swamiji has revived as Nityananda Gurukul, one same school, it is just, but each of our passion, each of our unique ability, what we can, what we will have the capabilities to excel in, is beautifully studied, nurtured, nourished, and we are empowered to lead in that. Whether a child wants to do temple construction, he is empowered to focus on that perspective. Whether a child is passionate to do arts, designing, he is empowered and focused in that perspective. Whether a child wants to do website designing, that child is nourished and nurtured in that aspect. Whether a child is interested in social media, how they can enrich and reach these sciences and profound teachings to the humanity, they are nurtured in that perspective. Every child's unique perspective is studied, and we are supported, nourished, and nurtured and empowered to excel in that. This teaches us the fundamental principle that there is no template for what is called the perfect man that exists. There is no need of uniformity. There's no need of coats, boots, and suits that needs to be fit into every man. And this teaches us to respect each and every one as a unique consciousness, where each and every one of us are excelling and expressing our best capabilities or the ultimate, the Paramashiva oneness, whatever we call it, in the best way by manifesting those unique dimensions. And actually, thank you so much for sharing this, Dr. Richard, because this puts me into the space of immense gratitude for what a life I have been given by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, because I was taught at a young age that there is no template to fit in, and I was taught to respect and revere each being as consciousness, individual and unique. So thank you so much, sir.
Well, thank you for your insightful comment. It reminds me of two things. One is a statement by Busan, B-H-U-S-A-N, teachers, you do not teach a subject, you teach a child. And I always try to remember that as an educator. We're not just inputting content, we are teaching a person. And even for those of us who teach adults, we're still trying to reach the child inside each of those adults. And as teachers, we need to remember that, remember the child inside ourselves. I also love your point about the individual and the education system acknowledging the individual, which for me connects with the earlier point that peace building starts inside each individual, that one must have inner peace before one can radiate peace out to one's family, one's community, one's nation, and the world. And so we have, as Mr. Pitts described, a society right now of the state of individuals and the ability to spread peace, and what you just talked about as intimately connected. And so an education that fosters the uniqueness of the individual, as you described, can then enhance that individual's ability to attain inner peace and thereby to emanate that peace outward to their family, their community, their nation, and the world. So thank you for that beautiful exposition of my answer.
Thank you so much. So Mr. John Pitts, we have another question for you. So we have shared about the way that the Vedic society, Hindu society was organized, the Varnashrama Dharma, which is basically the organization of the society in the 4 different groups, and which had very distinct responsibilities to ensure the decentralization of power that was always maintained. And so Mr. Pitts, as a priest and as one of Texas' top-rated lawyers and lobbyists, in what ways do you see the revival of the Varnashrama Dharma lifestyle fostering social harmony and peaceful coexistence amongst peoples of all religions, race, gender, and humanity at large?
I was growing up, a very popular game was King of the Mountain. I don't know why, but it seemed like many people had piles of dirt in their backyard, and the other people surrounding the mountain of dirt would attempt to push that person off of the mountain of dirt. So that person would become, the new person would become king of the mountain. Think about that. Think about what that was teaching the children playing that game. Power. They were teaching power. They were teaching ambition. Ambition to be the king of the mountain. I was playing that game at 5 years old. I was learning about power at 5 years old. I was learning about to be want to have that power at 5 years old. I was learning about ambition at 5 years old. That ambition was continued in my learning as I went to best law firm, to have the best clerkship with a court, as I went to seminary, to have the best experience when I got out in a large congregation, large church. So power becomes ingrained into us from a very early age. How do we give up that power? We heard a while ago about the education system. It's very different from the education system that I grew up in. However, you talked about that you had prayer at the beginning of your classes. And we've done away with prayer at the beginning of our classes in the United States. I grew up, however, in an education system that we did have that prayer, and it did bring about more focus in how we had that class. It's too bad that we've done away with that. I am thinking that it sounded like how your education system is arranged, and we have some of this. But I'm tomorrow meeting with the organization Texas Star Alliance, the organization that I founded and lead as a managing principal. I'm reorganizing it, and I'm reorganizing it in somewhat of the same deal, diffusing the power so it will be into two different people, not four, but two different people, pulling on their talents and how they can use their talents, their inner talents, to bring about a better harmony, and because of the fact that they will use better organization of the firm. So if we could do that, get away from the need to have the power to be king of the mountain, I believe that if we could start that at an early age, I think that we can bring about a better structure. But we must have that inner peace age. So I'm not sure how it'll work.
Actually, it's
Yeah.
a very powerful point, because at a very young age, we need that peace to be developed. That's a very important point, I would say, because that's what Swamiji has been training us. So we are the Gurukul kids who have been trained from a very young age into peace-based powerfulness. How power should be peace-based. Peace-based powerfulness need to develop inside of us. And whatever age you are, Swamiji says, a human being is not a finished product. You are a seed. At any point, you are a seed. Any age you might be, you have the possibility to grow. You are not a finished product that's packed and shelved. You are a seed that's budding to grow. You have this says, see, we worship Paramashiva, the ultimate pure consciousness. We never too late to fall with Paramashiva. Whatever age you might be, whatever point you might be in, is changeable. Mm-hmm. The inner construct that we have is changeable. So just we starting to, like the work that both of you, like both Mr. Dr. Richard and Mr. John Pitts, both of you have done, and the experience that you are, the plethora of experience that each of you are talking from is so insightful that I'm able to understand and cognize what Swamiji was revealing in a much deeper level. Because like as we are growing up in the Gurukul, the negativity or anger, I would just like to quote one example. When we say vibrant peace, one important component it has is thorns. All of us know rose plant generally has thorns. And why do rose plants have thorns? To protect themselves, for them to feel secure. Now, what if we give a space that is so non-violent and so secure that even rose plant can drop its thorns? That is the science Swamiji has taught us, and we have manifested that already. We have a garden with hundreds of rose plants, not genetically modified. There are hundreds of rose plants with 0 thorns. They don't grow up like that. They are there with thorns. We buy the rose plants with most number of thorns. We get them. I have a rose plant too. So the science that Swamiji has taught us is bring the inner peace. It will manifest outside as outer peace. Ahimsa paramo dharmaha. Ahimsa, non-violence, is the greatest principle. So Swamiji has taught us that when you bring that non-violence inside you, you just go sit near the rose plant. Plants are beings. They very well communicate with us. They very well take in our space and reflect back based on our inner space. So we just go sit in that absolute paramashanta, absolute vibrant, alive peace inside us. We go and tell the rose plant. We say the experiences we have with Swamiji. I go and share what are the profound revelations that Swamiji has given. And the rose plant responds to it by shedding its thorns. See, if you pluck the thorns, if anybody plucks away the thorns, there will be a wound on the plant. You will see a black mark on the plant. But if the rose plant drops it,
all of what Ma Tattvapriya was just sharing about the rose plant, we have a proper scientifically like foolproof recorded system through which we have photographed, because the whole of Gurukul, all the hundreds of children in Gurukul are given this as our first examination. We are taught this is a first test that we do, where we are given a rose plant each with thorns, and if we have a proper way of recording, measuring, where we do not touch the plant, meaning we do not pull out the thorns, we do not break the thorns, we do not touch the plant. In fact, only with that building that inner peace, we manifest the outer peace. And what she's saying is clearly recorded. We have all recorded, video recorded, and we have it properly tracked. And even we had few scientists and few like professors who had come and measured the whole thing. They verified the whole thing, and it's an authentic science which we practice.
Actually, when I got my first rose plant, we got the rose plant and I was talking to it. I think for almost a week, I had like smaller kids, the children that are much younger to me. They would just sit next to the rose plant, smile, talk to the rose plant. By the next day, the rose plant would have dropped its thorns. And I was wondering why my rose plant is not dropping its thorns. Why my rose plant is not dropping its thorns. So I used to go and sit and talk to it. And then one of my mentors had actually told me, hey, remember what Swamiji told? Why don't you just complete any anger which is there inside you, any inner violence that you have, just going, sharing. I used to go do the chanting. I used to go just talk to my rose plant. In 1 week, half of my rose plant has actually my rose plant had like 2 branches. One entire branch had completely dropped off its thorns, and one more branch had its thorns. And then it took me almost like 2-3 weeks till I actually completed, and I spoke to the rose plant, and it's completely dropped its thorns on its own. And after that, I used to tell my rose plant, telling I need heart-shaped petals because I want to offer it in my puja. And the rose plant used to give me flower with heart-shaped petals. When the inner, actually, that is what I understand as what Swamiji has taught us, where literally nature responds to you based on what you are having in your inner space. So I think Dr. Richard was earlier mentioning how it is individual by individual. The individual evolution needs to happen. So that the individual needs to be attended to. That's absolutely what I have as an experience itself. Because when this individual was attended to, it reflected outside. Just one individual, that Swamiji made me drop my anger, drop my violence. Immediately, a plant responded back by shedding its thorns. That is the power that we have as an individual. When an individual decides to change, when an individual transforms his space, nature has to respond, and that is the very law of the cosmos.
Actually, this is what we derive power from. We are not taught win over the others or kill the maximum video games, you are powerful. We are not taught, fight someone and win the argument, you are powerful. But we are taught make everybody around you happy, be blissful around you, create an ambience of non-violence. You are the most powerful. And that is what we derive power from, because end of the day, everyone strives to feel nice, feel happy, feel powerful. But what makes you feel powerful matters the most. And that is what Swamiji had taught us from the young age over other people. Or we are not taught, of games, video games where you kill people and feel powerful, how many people, how many lives you killed. No, we are taught power of how many lives around you can you heal, how many lives around you can you transform, how are you able to create an ambience of non-violence around you. And that is the first lesson that we are taught.
I wanted to highlight Mr. Pitts. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And as Ma Neta Tatopria Nanda and Ma Nandita were sharing, in Hinduism, we understand that we do not need to destroy anybody to exist. We don't feel threatened by the existence of anybody. And we understand that each one of us in our own uniqueness, we can stand powerfully and contribute and live enlightenment. And so you were sharing in the beginning about this game, King of the Mountain, which actually involves basically, yes, from the cognition of I have to destroy you in order to exist, to have my place, which it's in, I think there might be technical glitch. In Varnashrama Dharma, every single individual is empowered with a responsibility. And so there's no such thing as king of the mountain, because everyone is empowered in their own responsibility, and understanding that to make the society stable and prosperous, each one has to reach their own peak potential and fulfill the responsibility. So it's also always a democracy. Yes, thank you so much.
You bet.
Well, sorry, just a fun line that I wanted to add with what Ma Swatantra Priya was sharing, like Mr. John Pitts had shared about the King of the Mountain game, right? And I would say, if a bunch of balasins or the Gurukul kids who are given the Vedic education is taught, is got everyone to be in that mountain and exist blissfully, they become the king, right? So that is the non-violent and peaceful existence that we are taught.
I like that.
Actually, I'm actually feeling so excited, delighted, and so insightful to have like both of you in the panel, because like a lot of contemplation is happening as we are sharing with you, because so far it's like the way how things are actually happening outside, like when I say outside, I mean outside the Gurukul, is so different. Like the outside world, the suffering that's happening to what the leaders and thinkers and people like Ji is so beautifully mapping. So it's so delightful. Thank you so much. Thank you once again for joining. And I would just like to add one point over here, like Ma Swatantra Priya was mentioning about this Varnashrama Dharma. In today's society, we have a government, a group of people. And that is why they are having the power to exploit. They are having the power to correct. And end of the day, we all are affected. In the Vedic times, this used to be very different. There are 4 major things that we have as important components where the power needs to be distributed. The decision making, the power itself, money, food. So this is, and knowledge. These are 4 key areas where the power needs to be equally distributed into. We have these 4 only called as Brahmanas, who used to manage the knowledge dimension of the kingdom. Kshatriyas, the ones, the kings, soldiers, the people who used to manage the power, the power, democracy, that dimension. Third, Vaishyas. Vaishyas were the ones who used to manage the money dimension. They used to control the money. They used to manage and have the power of money. This is how in any kingdom, the powers were equally distributed. I'll give you one example. A doctor. Today, when we get a treatment, whether we are healed or not healed, it's not the doctor might be concerned about it, but that does not directly affect his life. Because already before we get healed, moment we get treated, we are paying the doctor. So what would the doctors wish be? More and more sick people happening, more and more profit for him. But in the Vedic times, it was different. When anybody is sick, let's say a farmer is sick, he goes to the doctor attends to him, the farmer does not pay money, portion of that food to the doctor as a tribute to him for keeping him healthy. So now what would be the intention of the doctor? To keep the whole society healthy, so there will be a mutual benefit for each other. This is the same, and this is how the whole society is kept stable. And this way, there is no exploitation or corruption that can happen. Everybody is happy because the power is not with one person, but equally distributed.
Actually, this furthering this discussion is so beautiful. And as we're also John Pitts, is there anything that you would like to share? Is there anything like you would like to add? Is there anything else that you want to share? I
don't believe so. I really appreciate y'all's comments very much. I think it expanded, needless to say, what I was talking about. I love the idea of what power is spreading the power to everyone and to be able to be sure that everyone is happy and included everyone.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Mr. John Pitts. And Dr. Richards, is there anything that you would like to share and you would like to add?
Thank you. Well, first of all, my friend Patrick Henry had to step away, but he asked me to share a message with you, and that was to let all of you know how honored he was to be part of the discussion. And Patrick, who is 81 years old, and who's gone to get his COVID booster shot. That's why he had to leave. Patrick said, "My hope in the future is based on the fact that 22-year-old women on the other side of the globe are teaching me how to make peace. Also, the wisdom of the Supreme Pontiff is offered to all, regardless of religion, nationality, and gender. So that's Patrick's thank you. I'd like to add my own. I've learned so much from listening to you, and I'm so inspired by Kailasa and Vedic principles, and the fact that you assembled this panel as part of the UN International Day of Peace. I'd like to thank Mahakathitha Ananda again for inviting me to be part of this. It's been a pleasure. I've learned so much, and we didn't get to talk yet very much about the role of women in peace building, but this panel is a great example of it. And in terms of leadership and power, I would just like to add that it's not merely from positions of political power. In colleges and universities in the United States for the last 20 years, there have been more women enrolling in college than men. There have been more women completing their degrees than men who start out. There have been more women earning higher degrees. They are the leaders of tomorrow, not just in politics, but in all. I've been so honored to be part of this. And thank you for all that you have taught me. And I wish this organization all the best as it continues to spread this beautiful message of nonviolence and cooperation and development of inner peace, inner light that then radiates to the rest of the world. Thank you.
Actually, really, that message that you had shared of your friend was really touching, and each of your messages are really touching. And I just like to add one thing here. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism happened here with this immense knowledge and literally evolutioning. I wouldn't say revolutionizing, I would say evolving all of us and giving us the possibility that at any point that you are in, you have the possibility in you. Even now, you can decide and you can manifest the life that you want without any violence, without any kind. And it was really wonderful to actually listen from each of you from the depth of your experiences. That really spoke a lot. I actually learned a lot in this panel just based on that experience, the depth of the experiences that both Dr. Richard and Mr. Pitts had, and what actually you spoke, and like how the world is actually striving to get to this point, because the world is striving to get to this change. And we would actually love to hear more and more such things from you. And we would be having these kind of panels more. And we would really love to invite you, and would be lovely to even have more guests who are joining here to share such amazing, insightful knowledge to us and making this whole thing so lively. Thank you so much, sir, for both of you for joining this panel.
And we thank all the viewers and everybody else that were watching with us throughout. And here we are on this International Day of Peace. We have a solution, the happening of the nation of Kailasa, where the Supreme Pontiff has beautifully envisioned such non-violent beings, at least 10,000 beings who manifest these extraordinary powers, a complete non-violent, just them sitting and leading is going to create a globe where it is only blissful coexistence without any violence. The best future and experiencing the greater science of life called Hinduism in our lives. So we thank each and every one of you for tuning in, Priyananda and Manitya Mahakathitananda, for each of you for sharing the stage with us. And we would again like to thank our esteemed guests of today, Dr. Richard and Mr. John Pitts for joining and sharing your profound experiences and thoughts with us. And the announcement of the Sustainable Development Goals by the UN, there are a lot of special panel discussions and special programs that are coming our way. So we thank all the viewers as well for joining us. And yes, like each and every viewer is awaiting, we are also going to be having the Sundareshwara Paramashiva Bhava Samadhi Darshan. And we will also be announcing about that. But before that, we would like to conclude this special.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Sarvam Bhagavat Shri Nityananda Paramashima Padukarpanamastu. Om Nityanandam. Various different social media platforms and awaiting the darshan of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, we have an announcement for all of you. We are going to be having this darshan starting shortly, and we are today, due to the intense samadhi of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, we are going to be having the alive Sundareshwara Paramashiva Sayuja Samadhi darshan that will be played. And now we request everyone to kindly sit with your head, neck, and spine in a straight line. Close your eyes and let us all chant the Mahavakya. Om Nityananda Paramashivoham. Chant this Mahavakya intensely and sit in a meditative state to receive darshan.
Om Nityananda Paramashivoham. Nityananda Paramashivoham. Om Nityananda. Om Nityananda Paramashivoham. Om Nityananda. Om Nityananda Paramashivoham. 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 Om Nityananda Paramashivoham.
பாட்டும் நானே பாவமும் நானே பாட்டும் நானே பாவமும் நானே பாடும் உன்னை நான் பாட வைத்தேனே பாட்டும் நானே பாவமும் நானே பாடும் உன்னை நான் பாட வைத்தேனே பாட்டும் நானே பாவமும் நானே கூட்டும் இசையும் கூட்டின் முறையும் காட்டும் என்னிடம் கதை சொல்ல வந்தாயோ கூட்டும் பாட்டும் நானே பாவமும் நானே பாடும் உன்னை நான் பாட வைத்தேனே பாட்டும் நானே பாவமும் நானே பொருளில் இசையும் நானே அசையும் பொருளில் இசையும் நானே ஆடும் கலையின் நாயகன் நானே அசையும் பொருளில் இசையும் நானே ஆடும் கலையின் நாயகன் நானே எதிலும் இயங்கும் இயக்கம் நானே எதிலும் இயங்கும் கூட வந்ததொரு பாட்டும் நானே பாவமும் நானே பாடும் உன்னை நான் பாட வைத்தேனே பாட்டும் நானே பாவமும் நானே சத்திகம் திகதிகம் திகதி தனிதபதி தனி 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 தனிதப மகரி மகரி மகர மகரி மகர झुमक झुमक जाना झुमक जाना झुमक झुमक दिंधा दिंधा आ झुमक झुमक दिंधा इंदा सागरी सागरी गरी दादा दादी दादी सब मामा नहीं गरी வெள்ளை யானை சாபம் தீர்த்து இந்திரனின் சாபம் தவிர்த்து வெள்ளை யானை சாபம் தீர்த்து கடம்பவனம் மதுரையானது மதுரையானது பாண்டியனின் மகனாய் உமாதேவி தடாதகையாய் அவதாரம் செய்து சௌந்தர பாண்டியனை அன்னையை மணம் முடித்து வெள்ளியம்பல திருநடனம் புரிந்து சோதரனுக்கு அன்னமிட்டது அந்த குழகன் என்றார்.
பாண்டியனை அழைத்து வந்து நிமித்தம் மாணிக்கம் விற்றது மதுரையில் மழை வற்றது.
சித்தராய் சித்துகள் புரிந்து கல்யாணைக்கு கரும்பு தந்து ஆனை அழித்து கால் மாறி ஆடியது. பார்ப்பனமாதுக்கு அனுகிரகம் செய்து வேடம் பழி தீர்த்து சாட்சி சொன்னது மழை தடு. நான் மாடக்கூடலாய் வெதியல் பாவம் தீர்த்து மாணவரங்கம் கொய்து சமணரும் நினைவில் வரும் ஆனந்தம் பொதுவில் தரும். மலவாழகன் என்றார். சொர்க்கம் காட்டியது வந்து வழக்குரைத்தது அனைவருக்கும் நினைவில் வரும் ஆனந்தம் புதுவில் வரும் அளவாயழகு நின்றார். விதியில் விறகு சுமந்து சேரனுக்கு திருமுகம் தந்தது. விதியில் விறகு சுமந்து சேரனுக்கு திருமுகம் தந்தது. பாட பத்திரர் பலகை தந்தது பலகை தந்தது. விரலுக்கு இசையில் வெற்றி தந்தது. பன்றிகளுக்கு பால் ஊட்டி வளர்த்தது. பன்னிருவரை மந்திரியாக்கச் செய்தது. கரிக்குருவிக்கு உபதேசம் செய்தது. நாரைக்கு முக்தியை தந்து அருளியது. அரவத்தால் காலவாய் காண்பித்தருளியது. அனைவருக்கும் நினைவில் வரும் ஆனந்தம் பொதுவில் தரும் மலவாழகன் என்றார். நரிப்பறியானது பரிநறியானது பிட்டுக்கு மண் சுமந்து நிமித்தியது சமணரை. ஆயிரமே சொக்கனின் விளையாடல் இன்னும் ஆயிரம் ஆயிரமே. படித்தவற்றும் கேட்டவற்றும் பல பல பலன் தருமே. பல பல பலன் தருமே. பல பல பலன் தருமே.
அனலாட புனலாட அம்புலியும் ஆட. அனலாட புனலாட அம்புலியும் ஆட அருகோடு கொன்றையும் எழிலாக ஆட அருகோடு கொன்றையும் எழிலாக ஆட மழுவாட மானாட மழுவாட மானாட மாமேரும் மாட புவியாட கணமாட காலனோடு காற்றாட திட்டாட கணமாட காலனோடு காற்றாட திட்டாட களி நடனம் காணறிய காட்சிதனை கண்டோமே களி நடனம் காணறிய காட்சிதனை கண்டோமே உமையாளும் தத்தோம் தகத்தோம் என்றாட உமையாளும் தத்தோம் தகத்தோம் என்றாட தாளமோடு இசை பாட ஆடிய கூத்தனே தாளமோடு இசை பாட ஆடிய கூத்தனே ஆடிய கூத்தனே ஓம் நம சிவாய ஓம் நம சிவாய ஓம் நம சிவாய ஓம் நம சிவாய ஓம் நம
Shiva, 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 Shiva. நன்மையை தந்திட நாம் மலர்ந்தோம் இங்கு. நாமே உங்கள் எல்லோருக்குள்ளும் தன்மையாயிருக்கும் தயாபர பரமசிவ பரம்பொருள் உயிரோடு உணர்வும் உருகி கண்களில் ஆனந்த கண்ணீர் பெருகி நிறைந்திடும் மனத்தொடு நிம்மதியோடு அமர்ந்திருங்கள். உங்கள் உயிருக்குள் உறைந்திருக்கும் நான் உயிர்த்து மலர்வேன் இப்பொழுது. ஆன்மலிங்கத்தை கொணர்ந்து ஆனந்த கந்தத்தில் தாங்கி நிறை உணர்வோடு அமர்ந்திருங்கள். நிர்விகல்பம் தருவேன். உங்கள் உயிருக்குள் உறைந்திருக்கும் நான் உணர்வாய் மலர்ந்து இருப்பேன். ஓம் ஓம் சிவ 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 சிவ.
எடுதந்தானடி தில்லையிலே எடுதந்தானடி தில்லையிலே அதை பாட வந்தேனவன் எல்லையிலே. எடுதந்தானடி தில்லையிலே அதை பாட வந்தேனவன் எல்லையிலே. இறைவனை நாட இன்னிசை பாட திருமுறை கூறிடும் அறநெறி கூட எடுதந்தானடி எல்லையிலே இறைவனை நாட
கருணாகரனே நடராஜா நீலகண்டனே தீன கருணாகரனே நடராஜா நீலகண்டனே தீன கருணாகரனே நடராஜா நீலகண்டனே நின்னருள் புகழ்ந்து பணியும் என்னையும் இறங்கி அருளும் நின்னருள் புகழ்ந்து பணியும் என்னையும் இறங்கி அருளும் மௌன குருவே ஹரனே எனையாண்ட நீலகண்டனே மௌன குருவே ஹரனே எனையாண்ட நீலகண்டனே தீன கருணாகரனே நடராஜா நீலகண்டனே தீன கருணாகரனே நடராஜா நீலகண்டனே ನೀನಲೋಚನೀ ಮಣಾಳ ತಾಂಡವಮಾಡುಂ ಸಭಾವದೆ ನೀನಲೋಚನೀ ಮಣಾಳ ತಾಂಡವಮಾಡುಂ ಸಭಾವದೆ ஞானியர் மனம் விரும்பும் நீலகண்டனே ஞானியர் மனம் விரும்பும் நீலகண்டனே மௌன குருவே மௌன குருவே மௌன குருவே மௌன குருவே ஹரனே எனையாண்ட நீலகண்டனே ஆதியந்தமில்ல ஹரனே அன்பர் உள்ளும் வாழும் பரனே ஆதியந்தமில்ல ஹரனே ஆதிமதிமேனியனே பரமேஷா நீலகண்டனே மௌன குருவே மௌன குருவே மௌன குருவே மௌன குருவே மௌன குருவே ஹரனே எனையாண்ட நீலகண்டனே தீன கருணாகரனே நடராஜா நீலகண்டனே தீன கருணாகரனே நடராஜா அருள் தர வேணும் என் இறைவனே. கலாஞான வடிவான அமலனே, நடன கலாஞான வடிவான அமலனே, கதி தரும் மலர்பாதனே, ஜெகதீசனே, ஜெகதீசனே, உயிரெல்லாம் நிறைபவனே, தேவ தேவ எனையாளும் மாதவமே, தயாபராமகேஸ்வரா அருள் தர வேணும் என் இறைவனே. அன்பினால் உருகி பண்பாடவே, நான் அன்பினால் உருகி பண்பாடவே, அந்த அப்பரும் சுந்தரரும் நான் அல்லவே, கனகாபிஷேகம் செய்வோம் என்றால் உனக்கு காசாசை இல்லை, அது நீ தந்ததே. கனகாபிஷேகம் செய்வோம் செய்யதேது எனது பொருளேது, எனது செய்யதேது நீ எல்லாம் உலகம் ஏது, மாதவமே தயாபராமகே.
சிவ 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 சிவ. நலன்கள் எல்லாம் பெற்று நல்வாழ்வு வாழ்ந்திட உலகனைத்துக்கும் ஆனந்தத்தொடு பெருவரமும் அளித்தோம். உள்ளத்துள் உறைந்திருக்கும் நாம் உயிர்த்தெழுந்து உங்கள் எல்லோருக்கும் நன்மை செய்வோம். உண்மை இதுவே. சுந்தரே சந்தரும் பேரருள் வாழ்க வாழ்க. ஆனந்தத்தோடு வாழ்வீர்களாக. ஓம். Corina Parvu Tatast. You will experience your life successfully. Maya Das Tatast. Sarvanya Pitakarta Shivapunya Praptirast. Tattatreya Tatpurusha Shivam Tatast. Nirvikalpa Samadhi Praptirast. Om, 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 Om. Supriya Maurya Tatast. Parimala Shivaraman Tatast.
मनोबुद्ध्यहङ्कार चित्तानि नाहं न च श्रोत्रजिह्वे न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च व्योमभूमिर्न तेजो न वायु चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं 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 शिवोऽहं
Shiva. Shiva. ஆன்மலிங்கத்தை சக்தியை உயிர் பெறச் செய்து நாமே உங்கள் எல்லோருக்குள்ளும் பெரும் நன்மை செய்திடுவோம். ஓம் சிவ சிவ சிவ.
च वायु न वा सप्तधातुर्न वा पञ्चकोशः न वा पाणिपादौ न चोपस्थपायु चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं 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 न मे द्वेषरागौ न मे लोभमोहौ मदो नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभावः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखं न मन्त्रो न तीर्थं न वेदः न यज्ञः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्ता चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं 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 न मृत्युर्न शङ्का न मे जातिभेदः पिता नैव मे नैव माता न जन्म न बन्धुर्न मित्रं गुरुर्नैव शिष्यः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं 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 शिवोऽहं
ओम शिव 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 ओम शिव 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 शिव
தூயனவன் சிவகாமத உண்டரினவன் காமம் அகற்றிய தூயனவன் சிவ காமஜ உங்களினேயனவன் மாமரி ஓது செவ்வாயனவன் மணி மந்தேனு ஞானகாயனவன் மாமரி ஓது செவ்வாயனவன் மணி மந்தேனு ஞானகாயனவன் தல்லை கனி விட்டும் சுத்தனவன் தல்லை கனி விட்டும் சுத்தனவன் முடி கருளிய கல்லனவன் தல்லை கனி விட்டும் சுத்தனவன் முடி கங்கை கருளிய கல்லனவன் இல்லை சிதம்பர சித்தனவன் தேவசிங்கமெனூய தங்கமவன் தேவசிங்கமெனூய தங்கமவன் அம்பலத்தாடன் கையனவன் அம்பலத்தாடசி ஐயனவன் அன்பர் அன்பிற்கெளி தரும் மெய்யனவன் மும்பை முடிக்கணி துயனவன் பயஞ்சோதியவன் பரஞ்சோதியவன் முடிக்கணி துயனவன் பயஞ்சோதியவன் பரஞ்சோதியவன் பயஞ்சோதியவன் பரஞ்ச ஜோதியவன் ஜோதியவன் பரஞ்சோதியவன் சிவ சங்கரனை பணிந்தாடுவோம் புகழ் பாடுவோம் நிலமே சிவ சங்கரனை பணிந்தாடுவோம் புகழ் பாடுவோம் நிலமே புகழ் பாடுவோம் நிலமே அவன் புகழ் பாடுவோம் நிலமே சிவ சங்கரனை பணிந்தாடுவோம் புகழ் பாடுவோம் நிலமே புகழ் பாடுவோம் நிலமே அவன் புகழ் பாடுவோம் நிலமே
கலசம் போற்றி போற்றி சுரும்பு முறை அடிமலர் குழல் போற்றி உத்தரிய தொடி தோல் போற்றி கரும் பொருவ சிலை போற்றி கவுனியத்தில் சுரங்க கலசம் போற்றி போற்றி சுரும்பு முறை அடிமலர் குழல் போற்றி சுரும்பு முறை அடிமலர் பூங்குழல் போற்றி